my God, what a great name. That's gonna be awesome.
Oh, yes, yes. Gonna be in the front.
Yeah, I know. Every time you come to the back. Yeah, something's talking. When I heard the company, it sounded like part of it. I don't know.
I'm good.
Kind of short. Contact on the way.
Really?
Hey, they put all the best of the people. How to go up?
Please.
Yeah, no, we're not gonna go without the kids and grandkids.
Thanks for picking a sunny, warm day.
Look at this. Hey, we could be spring skiing. What happens when you go?
It's still time. Yeah, I think,
LG, what happens when you vote one time? Johnny, do you know where the rest of the was? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I thought they were. This is one of my sons, John. One of my grandsons, not his.
Boy, we're great at kind of having covered.
All the family. The other son that we're still waiting for.
There was a young.
Yours is fancy.
So, yeah, mom was there. Well, last time they were still. Here, what's up? Good.
Oh, yeah, don't worry about that.
Good.
Yeah, huh?
Come on over, Tony.
Hit me in there. That's weird.
Tony, this is my hair, guys.
John, I think they ran out of.
Yeah.
This is my wife, Brenda. Yeah. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tom Lozon, and I'm honored to be here today to endorse and support Lieutenant Governor John Rodgers. Thank you, John, for stepping up to continue your good work and for continuing to serve Vermonters. Now, John has a long history of public service. He started participating in town meetings when he was a young man, and he was elected to the position of collector of delinquent taxes in his hometown of Glover. Now, John, you probably just didn't know any better. Now, this isn't exactly the most glorious position, but it's a necessary one. And it's one at which John excelled. This is just one of the reasons behind his success as our lieutenant governor. John has empathy and respect for people who are struggling. John went on to be elected to the House of Representatives in 2003. He served for 8 years until he was elected to the Senate, where he served his neighbors for 8 more years until 2020. In the House and Senate, John earned a reputation as a man who put progress before party. In 2024, he offered his level-headed, authentic representation to Vermonters once again and was elected Vermont's 84th Lieutenant Governor. John was raised on a dairy farm, and he developed a strong work ethic at an early age. John did chores before he went to school in the morning, and then he did his chores again when he got home from school in the evening. He started his own masonry business in his 20s, and he still runs it today. During John's career, he's built and restored houses and barns, roads and bridges, septic systems, water systems, and drainage systems, fireplaces, chimneys, and stone walls and stone foundations. There is virtually nothing, and those who work with John will attest to this, there is virtually nothing that John can't build. But John knows firsthand that in building and in government, there is no substitute for a strong and solid foundation. While John is blue-collar through and through, he possesses the intellect of a formal academic. I believe John is the best choice to represent Vermonters because he has lived like most Vermonters, often working too hard for too little, in a state that is growing unsustainably expensive to live in. John knows that it doesn't have to be that way, and he is committed to bending the affordability curve and building a solid foundation for future generations. In short, John knows how to get a job done. His experience in life, his experience in public service, and his empathy for those around him make him the best choice for Lieutenant Governor. Throughout his entire time in public service and in his own personal life, John has been known around the state as an honest, hardworking Vermonter. He's also known as the person willing to work across the aisle in a nonpartisan way, whether he was serving as a Democrat or a Republican, to build bridges and to find the common ground. John is a Vermonter first, and he believes to his core that when someone is given the honor to serve, they have an obligation to work with others for the good of all Vermonters. And this is why I'm here today to show my support for John Rodgers for Lieutenant Governor, and I'm asking all Vermonters to please support John in the 2026 election. We need his steady, thoughtful, and compassionate leadership now more than ever. And with that, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce John's lovely wife, Brenda, and the cornerstone, notice how I did that, work that in, and the cornerstone of Team Rodgers, Brenda Rodgers.
Good afternoon, and thank you all for joining us today. I have known this man, John Rodgers, for much of my life. We went to grade school together. We've now been married for 35 years and raised our 2 sons together in Glover, Vermont, where we both grew up in the same community. We purchased the farm that John was raised in, and we now call that our home. Throughout our life together, I have watched him time and time again put the interest of others first. In his business, his public service, and in our lives, he is always taking care of everyone who needs help. John is honest and hardworking. When our boys were in school, he coached soccer and filled in as a referee when was needed. When I started a booster club to buy new uniforms and equipment for Glover School, he was always there by my side, raising thousands of dollars to buy equipment and uniforms for the Glover School sports team. When our kids were in school, they would often have a bunch of their friends over, and John was often the short order cook, keeping them fed and more or less keeping them from too much mischief. When we would wake up some mornings, we would find a dozen sleeping bags filled with boys on the floor, and it was John who got up and got everyone going and was making breakfast. I have seen that same dedication in his public service. He puts in long days, often gets home late at night, and sometimes, unfortunately, missing some family events because of his commitment to Vermont and to Vermonters. The reason he ran for this office is because he believes that he can help Vermonters, and he is doing just that. He helps them individually through the many phone calls and emails that he makes connecting Vermonters to help in the services that they need. He is doing it by working with the governor, representatives, and senators in forwarding legislation that makes Vermont more affordable. No matter their differences on partisan issues, John is committed to the state of Vermont. He is worried, though, as am I, that if we don't make Vermont more affordable, our grandchildren will not be able to afford to live here. And that is why he is going to keep standing up for the working and other fixed income Vermonters. There is no other candidate with the vast public service experience or the incredible record of working in a nonpartisan fashion to forward bills and pass amendments to help Vermonters. There is no other candidate who has worked as hard as John throughout their lifetime, and there is no other candidate that will work as hard for you. I am asking all Vermonters to join me in supporting the finest man that I know, my husband, John S. Rodgers, for Lieutenant Governor in 2026.
Thank you. It's always good to have your wife's vote. Good afternoon, my fellow Vermonters, and thank you everybody for joining me here. Nice to be out here on a sunny day, and we're not testing the rating of our boots, but we're showing that we're true Vermonters in one of the most beautiful settings in the state. First, I want to thank all the Vermonters that voted for me in the 2024 election and gave me the privilege of serving in this position. It's an amazing position in which I get to do the thing that I love most, and that's help people. I've been able to advocate and assist Vermonters from around the state, like Matt and Jess from the Kingdom, who needed help with tax issues. Mark from Franklin County, who is having trouble with current use. Joe in Southern Vermont, Seth in the Northeast, and Chris in the Northwest having trouble with permitting and with wetlands issues, and so many other families. Reaching out to every person who contacts my office, I've had many great conversations with Vermonters, and some of them are even here today, and I thank them for being here. When someone calls my office, I don't, and I never have, and I never will ask who they voted for or what their party affiliation is. I just ask, how can I help? I operate with an open door policy in a nonpartisan fashion, and have spent the last year plus meeting with moms and dads, business owners, nonprofit leaders and staff, union workers, farmers, loggers, tech center leaders, social workers, nurses, doctors, educators, and many more. And no matter where I go, the high cost of living is on people's mind. I've heard many stories and will share just a few. I had a gentleman call me who retired from the state with a good job, so he has a good pension. His wife retired from the federal government, so we know she has a good pension. He told me they couldn't afford to live here anymore. So if they can't afford to live here, who that's retired will be able to. I heard from a 30-something-year-old woman in Chittenden County who works for a high-tech manufacturing company. She said, I make really good money, but there's never anything left. Maybe the most poignant was the superintendent of schools, who said he'd lived here for 8 years and his property taxes had doubled. He said he loves his job. He loves his community. His children love the school, but he said when they're out of school, he'll likely leave. I will keep working with the governor's office and with legislators every day until we defeat the affordability crisis that is taxing us. Traveling the state and touring tech centers, maker spaces, businesses, manufacturers, and meeting with Vermonters where they live and work, it's clear we have an opportunity to build a workforce that Vermont needs and at the same time change the demographics that the state needs. My experience and long history of public service and 16 years in the legislature make me uniquely qualified to get these things done for the people of Vermont. And from the Lieutenant Governor's office, I can bring opportunities in the trades and manufacturing to our young people and those seeking new and more secure careers. So I will say it again, I will keep working with the governor's office and with legislators every day, building bridges necessary to defeat the affordability crisis taxing us and holding us back. I believe we have a huge opportunity to build deep organic soil and grow more food here in Vermont. We know that the dairy industry brings in billions of dollars to the state of Vermont and feeds people around the country. New England has a goal of producing 30% of our food by 2030, and we've a long way to go to reach that goal. Vermont farmers, producers, and specialty food companies can play a major role in that. Deep soil stores carbon and makes our land more resilient to heavy rains and drought. It produces more food in Vermont and keeps more dollars in Vermont. And by exporting food to the millions of people within a day's drive of our farms, we can feed more people healthy, nutritious food and bring more money back to the state. A common sense solution that works for our environment and for the people of Vermont. I have always and will always stand up for everyone's rights. It's more important than ever that people speak out when the Constitution is violated, when people's basic rights are violated, and when people's human dignity is violated. I will always stand for freedom and unity. As your Lieutenant Governor, I will work to build a better Vermont for our children and our grandchildren. Thank you. I'm happy to take questions if anybody in the press has any.
Tiebreaker vote, Russia.
We're holding a press conference at 1 o'clock, and we'll hold all questions on that vote until 1 o'clock in my office. We'll answer those questions at 1 o'clock. I invite you all to the office. This is more about this announcement and the things I've been doing in this last year. So I'm hoping if you have those questions, you'll come to the office at 1.
Can you point to some very specific policy changes you've advocated for in the office over the last year to address affordability concerns that you campaigned on?
I'm not sure if there's anything direct, but I work with senators and representatives every day on various policies and how we move them forward. Just trying to get common sense stuff moved forward. We need more housing. I've been working with the new commissioner of DEC, trying to figure out how we get those wetland maps on the ground so that people know where they can and can't build. That is an issue that I've spent an unbelievable amount of time on in my office. People who go through the permitting process, get their septic system permits, get all their municipal permits, build their house, moved in, and then all of a sudden they got somebody from DEC there saying they've got a wetland violation. And we have to have a system where that is sorted out up front and people aren't getting expensive fines after the fact, even though they've hired expensive engineers and consultants that say there is no wetland there. So that's, I think really if we're going to address housing, we're going to address affordability. Of course, healthcare and education are the big two, but making sure that people can build affordable homes is another one, and permitting has a lot to do with that.
You support all the measures that were in Governor Scott's executive order on housing?
Yes, I think that was a good step forward, and I think we've a lot more to do for rural Vermont. I actually think that the Act 250 bill that the legislature passed helped out a lot of communities that are urban, and it is making it harder to develop in rural areas. The road rules especially problematic, and I don't believe the legislature should be conserving people's land without compensation when they paid for that land, thinking they had the right to use it, and they're paying taxes based on the highest and best use.
Do you think the complex land use issues like that ought to be resolved by executive fiat, or do you think that should be resolved through conversations with the legislature to
It should be resolved by the legislature, and it should have been resolved a long time ago. And I think the governor's just showing his frustration, and I commend him for it. Those are changes that need to be made. And as I said, when the legislature did make a policy change on Act 250, they helped some communities but further disadvantaged others. I think we need further conversations on those.
Where Act 73 is heading, and where you're for or not.
Yeah, so I don't know if I would take it down to 5 districts. My preference would be maybe forming districts around tech centers or closely aligning them. I want every student to have the opportunity to go to tech centers and get hands-on education. I don't believe we should close small schools because they're small. I believe we should close small schools if they are not working programmatically and offering the kids a good education, or if they're excessively high spending. But the bottom line is that when voters in our towns and school districts vote, the vote on their budget should directly correlate to the taxes in that town. And currently under Act 60, it doesn't. It needs to be, it has to be simplified. It has to be understandable. And if you want to be a high spending town, you can be, but the town that's low spending next door shouldn't pay for it.
You mentioned the dairy industry as the industry you'd like to support and find a way to help it support Vermont's economy. Got any ideas for how to do that? Vermont's dairies are shrinking dramatically.
Yeah, they are. And, unfortunately, if you keep up with what's happening around the country with food, we're in a bad space. Big corporations are consolidating and taking over meat and grain, and it's similar in dairy. The processors control the price. It's unfortunate. Our government has not ever adapted practices that support farmers for what they actually spend to put those products out. And I think that needs to be looked at. But I think what we have the opportunity to do here in Vermont, and it's already started. There's a huge number of folks that are raising meat. There's a growing grain movement. There's a pretty exciting grape and winemaking movement. I mean, there's a lot of diversified agriculture going on here besides dairy that I think provides a lot of opportunity. Our ancestors a couple generations ago grew much of their own food here. We weren't trucking it from California. We weren't flying it in from South Africa. We've got the opportunity to do that. And if we're going to do the right thing for the planet, it is building deep soil, which can absorb rains. It can hold water during the drought, and it's growing more food here. Food security, food nutrition, and keeping money here in the state. And so I'm supporting all types of agriculture, not just dairy. Dairy's our big business, and yes, it is worrisome that you don't seem to be able to survive with a small farm unless you're one of those few that's doing value added, which is also awesome because there are a bunch of small farms that are doing value added products that are doing very well. I think the future of farming is trying to avoid the Tysons and the Cargills of the country and start setting up more local food networks and building on that. We have a massive opportunity to bring money back to the state by growing food here and going to the New York City and Boston markets and other close markets with a lot of people who will pay extra for quality food. No, I don't. My position is this is an office to advocate for all Vermonters, and that's what I've been doing. phone calls and emails with Vermonters that need help who've called an agency or department and nobody got back to them. Or I've had a few that their legislator hasn't got back to them, and we pick those up and we help them out. And we also travel around the community, trying to help build networks, listening to businesses as to what they need, and we bring those messages back and communicate with the legislature and with the governor's office. And I'd like to think we've helped move a lot of priorities just by bringing those messages back.
Governor Scott clearly sees nuclear energy and expanding that as important for Vermont's energy transition, the clean energy transition. What do you make of that? Do you agree?
Yeah, I actually think that if it's proven safe, then we have a plug and play place to set it right up. Where Yankee was a terrible design, and so I'm glad it's gone. But it did produce a lot of cheap power for Vermonters for years, and luckily we got it decommissioned before anything bad happened. I think a lot of the new modulars are very safe and very efficient, and I think it's something that we have to consider. One of the things I'm very concerned with is all the energy that the data centers are using. And do we really, I mean, is that really the way we're going to go? Are we going to depend on AI no matter what the cost? Are we just going to keep gobbling up energy and warming up water? If so, there's no way that we're going to keep up with it with the energy we have on our grid here today.
For the younger voters, maybe they have generations, but obviously, especially the times right now, there's a lot of things that are happening.
Yeah, and that's really the only reason I got back into politics. One of my sons just finished building a house last year, and we had a piece of land for him. We've got excavators, and so we did all the digging. His father-in-law helped him with a lot of the carpentry stuff, and it is still ridiculously expensive to build a house, even though we helped them all we can. And so I'm looking at the next generation, his kids and my other son's kids, and I'm wondering if they're going to be able to live here. And that's why I got back into the game. So from my perspective, I mentioned it briefly in the speech. I think we have a giant opportunity to train our students that are in school today to be the next generation of tradespeople. When I go to a job, most of the tradespeople are my age, not my son's age. I want to see more my son's age. There's a ton of tradespeople that are making six figures, some of them well into the six figures. It's not a low paying job like it used to be. If we want to have affordable housing, we need more contractors, because there are so few contractors in the state today that if you go to get one, you're lucky to get on a waiting list and get a house built in a couple of years. And the majority of those contractors are building $1 million and $2 million and $5 million houses, because that's where there's more profit. So we need more contractors on the ground. We got to get back to building houses that are affordable for our young people to be able to stay here. So I think that has huge potential. Also, our manufacturing sector, it's all around the state, but a large part of it is in Chittenden County. When I'm talking with them, they are always looking for help and having a hard time finding it. And they say, when I can't find talent here in Vermont, they advertise out of state. When somebody comes and actually wants the job, they can't find housing. So really, for me, it's about building the workforce to build and maintain the infrastructure of the future we need here in Vermont. And hopefully that is going to help lead to a demographic change, which we also need, because we know we're one of the oldest oldest states in the country. And that doesn't bode well for our workforce.
John, there's a bill out there right now, increase property taxes for 3 years, and also provide for across the board cuts to state government. What do you think of that?
Well, I think Vermonters have told me that something has to happen on property taxes. So many Vermonters have gotten hold of my office and said, I can't afford to live here anymore. And so we have to do something. We know that the Act 73 changes are going to take quite a bit of time. And so I'm certainly open to any kind of property tax freeze or slowing it down, because having a 40% increase in 5 years is unacceptable because nobody's pay went up that much. And so now what we have is Vermonters spending more and more of their income on housing. And, quite frankly, many of them are 50% or more, and it should be 30%.
73 calls for districts with a minimum.
I don't know exactly where the threshold is, Peter. Something has to change. I do believe that we have more people in administrative and business offices than we need. I believe that we need to spend more money on the teachers and staff that have direct contact with the kids. We need to make sure we have a curriculum that's teaching the basics so that when kids come out, they're ready for the workforce. And they're, again, huge supporter of hands-on and technical education. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Resource and the program they have over in Barre Youth Build. But there's a bunch of kids over there that I met that either dropped out or were kicked out of school. So they were not going to get an education. This group took them, helps them with their academics, but a large portion of it is hands-on learning the trades. And these kids go out into the community and do work for people out in the community. This shows that we should never have throwaway kids. We got kids that may not learn well academically, but we got to get them hands-on learning, because if they excel at hands-on learning, they can have a good career in the trades. And if those kids would have been left on their own, where would they have ended up? Likely in trouble. So huge proponent of making sure every kid has access to hands-on learning. Thank you.